Good afternoon. Good morning, evening, everyone. Whoever's live or whoever's recording, wherever you are. It's been a minute, guys.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
It has been
And
a minute.
Wes wanted to apologize, didn't you, Wes?
Yeah, it's not our fault.
Already?
It's definitely not our fault. What is that?
Oh,
Is
he's
Wes?
cutting off already.
We lost.
We did not hear anything of that, Wes, but it's fine. Because the funny things about this live session is that everything works well in the background when we're testing it, and then when we go live, shit starts happening.
Yeah, I think you need to apologize again for that, Wes, as well. Yeah, but Wes is right. It's been a while because a couple of weeks ago we had someone on, but because of his very busy schedule, he's had to postpone. But it's good. We have got it back in again. We're just going to figure out the dates. Yeah, so it's going to be a pre-recorded one. That one, just because he's a busy person, but it'll be worth it. Today we've got a wicked guest lined up. But before we do that, let's talk about what's been happening in the last week or 2 weeks, like what we usually do, like any good things that we want to share and stuff. Where's Martin?
I've got some positive news for everyone in the world.
For once.
Ash is getting a new car with an updated sat nav.
You're getting a new car?
I haven't getting a new car yet.
What are you getting?
I'm going fully electric.
You are.
I'm still staying loyal with Toyota, but it's an electric one.
So you're fully vegan. Now you're going fully electric. What's next?
You'll have to wait and see. Yeah, but the good news is that we'll have a sat nav, so I'll get to places.
Yeah, I'm still gonna walk and take the bus because every single time in the car with you, we're just going in the wrong direction each time.
Yeah,
I'll see you there.
Guys in the chat, thanks for dropping by. There's Arthur. What's up, Arthur? Jordan Shaw. Yeah. Hi, how's it going? Let's know where you're from as well.
Jordan's a G. I'm just going to say that he's a legend of a guy. Really cool guy. You should introduce yourself. Follow that guy. Yeah, he's a
right.
Friend. Yeah, I like.
So before we bore people further, should we do it?
Do what?
Yeah.
Whatever we are into here, we're doing. Yes.
Just bring him in, Ash. Come on, let's go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, let's just get our guest in then. He's. I've written a little few notes here, but he's another person that doesn't need much of an introduction in the copywriting world. What's interesting is actually, I wanted to interview this person years ago, and we ended up getting on like a call just before the recording, just to have a bit of a debrief and stuff. And we just chatted. We just chatted for an hour, and at the end of it, both of us were like, shit, you know what? We should have just hit record. It was one of those. And then we didn't get a chance to get on, for whatever reason, we didn't get on live. But for me, he's one of the best copywriters and storytellers of this generation. And that's, I don't say that lightly. He's endorsed by creative legends like Rory Sutherland, Drayton Bird, as well as massively being respected by all of his peers in the industry, including myself. He's helped so many businesses, helped shape brands and his words, with his words, and teaches everything he knows in the form of his not to be missed email newsletter. That's one newsletter I religiously read. And just through his content, and recently he's also now launched a new book. So I think I'll introduce him. It's none other than Eddie Shleyner from VeryGoodCopy.
Hello. Ash, that was a very generous introduction. I really appreciate it. I wish I was that good, but I really appreciate it, and I'm happy to be here, man.
Yeah, well, this is another thing I know about you as well. You're super talented, great at what you do, but very humble as well. And it's a great trait to have, man. And yeah, I'm excited to speak to you about this. But this is the thing with this talk. Another thing that happened this week, me and Eddie had a conversation just before this call, before this live, and we're trying to think of a little bit of an agenda. And then we got on a call, and the conversation, we just started talking about Eddie's new book, right? And again, we just thought, you know what, this would be actually quite a cool conversation to have on the live, because it's not just about the book. I think it'll also apply to people out there, whether it's launching a product, course, or book themselves, but I think there's elements of brand design, writing. So it's not just about the power of writing, it's the power of strategy, power of collaboration, feedback, all of these type of things. So let's start with that. And before we actually start in terms of the process, Eddie, tell us a little bit about the book and why you decided to write it now, and who's it for as well.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think you're too nice to say that, basically I was just like, look, I made a lot of mistakes. I wish I would have done things differently. All's well that ends well, but I did make a lot of mistakes, and I did prolong the process. I did, in general, I think I some things were misdone, and it made the process longer and harder for me. So I think that's what we were talking about, and I'm happy to share those things because it's part of the creative process. And if you have people that are doing creative work on the show, listening, watching, maybe it'll help them, and it'll probably be cathartic for me because I've just been kind of cooped up for 6 months and in a silo, just kind of thinking about these things. So the book started, I've been doing Very Good Copy for 10 years. It started as a blog, and then it became it started as just this thing that I was doing to teach myself copywriting. And then it became a blog, and it became a newsletter. And so I don't know. It was just it wasn't the fact that it was a 10-year kind of milestone that I was like, okay, it's time to write a book. It was just kind of this intangible feeling that I got hey, I think I think I'm ready to present all of this stuff that I've been writing in a different form, and in a new way, a fresh way, I guess. So that's why I started putting it all together. And who's it for, you asked?
Yeah, who's it for as well? Yeah.
I think it's for the same people that are reading my blog, reading my newsletter. Folks that are writing copy, folks that are doing creative work in general. Very Good Copy is all about copywriting and the techniques and principles that inform that discipline. And then, I also like to talk about the creative process and creative theory, and it's for folks that are interested in that.
So what's interesting is when I actually worked with you, you helped me with, for everyone out there, you helped me with some of my copy edit, and you coached me through some of my writing as well, because there's that element, and me, Martin, and Wes see this all the time with businesses when we do brand strategy. There's the element of you can't read the label from inside the jar, so you need someone else with you, and that's why I called on you as well. Not only that, because obviously I know your words were going to be a lot more powerful than I could have done, and I'm glad I did. But what I learned also from that experience was you do think like a strategist, and it's that advertising maybe experience that comes from from your past and what you do now. But you think like a strategist. You think there's a process in place, when you work with people. Now I'm thinking, after the conversation that we had yesterday, did that process go out the window totally for you? Was it kind of painful in that sense?
I think it did a little bit. I think it did. I think I was in a silo, and I wasn't really, I wasn't getting feedback early. I wasn't really thinking about it, the way that I normally would with collaborators or with other people that, I guess cared about the work. And so, yeah, I think I did. And also another thing is I think it kind of messed me up that it was in print. Like all the writing was going to be in print now. Like there's some kind of safety net, some kind of like something that, something about publishing online. And yeah, like the internet's written in ink, but like there's something about publishing online where I feel good and safe knowing that if I ever want to edit this, I could just go edit it. Or if I ever want to take it down, I'll take it down. And it was just something about the fact that it was going to be in print, and it was just going to be that way in perpetuity unless there was an updated version, that I think made me really precious about the writing and just in general the work. So I think that aspect of it changed the dynamic for me a little bit.
Yeah, I think when we do when we do brand strategy for companies, there's obviously there's timelines and everyone has deadlines, but we also say that a brand is the work's never done, because it's an ongoing process, right, Martin? It's just but there's something obviously different with a book. It's you feel like, and again, I think we had this conversation yesterday, is that you want to carry on improving. Do you see yourself a little bit of a perfectionist in that sense?
Yeah, a little bit. I think so. I think I do want to just make everything as good as it can be and do my best within the time period that I have but for some reason in this case, that I just kept on saying, you know what, like I'm going to have to prolong this. I'm going to have to extend this deadline. And I just kept on doing that over and over and over again, because I was like, it's got to be right. I just felt like it was the culmination of a lot of work and a lot of effort. And like, why wouldn't I give it a little bit more time to make it right and to feel satisfied with it, and that was, I guess in hindsight, like looking back, I'm glad I did it, but I'm also a little surprised with myself that I let these principles that I usually follow, these guidelines, kind of go by the wayside.
So what was that editing process for you like? Because I know that you mentioned here, I've got on my notes, is like to make things better, not different. Do you want to tell us what you mean about that?
Yeah, I think that's just a general rule. Like, I think it was Jim Jenkins that said it. He's an author. He's written 155 books, so he's prolific. And his ethos is like, look, when you're editing, your goal should be to make it better, and not to make it different. And if you start making it different, that's when you know that you've gone too far. You need to kind of stop. And I think I was editing so much that I did recognize that. I was like, wait a second, this article isn't what it was when it started. To make something better, I think you have to, it's about, hey, can I say this more clearly? Can I say this more concisely? Can I say the same thing in fewer words? I think when you're writing, that's a good rule to follow. Like, can I say the same thing in less words? If you can, you've made the work better.
I love that. I think that in branding terms is absolutely vital, right? I think people are time poor and they're bombarded with many different brands. No one has the time to decipher a brand, right? So good brands are simple brands, immediately understandable. And I think that translates into copy as well, right? So it has to be simple and direct, and with obviously the brand around it. But so, Eddie, what is very good copy? What makes shit copy or average copy, and what makes very good copy based on your experience?
Well, a lot of things. I mean, first and foremost, I think there's three pillars. There's and there's three pillars in general when you're talking about direct marketing. Every campaign boils down to the market, the offer, and the creative. And the creative is actually three separate things. The creative is the copy. The creative is the art or the images that you see, and then it's also the layout, the format. So the creative is split up into several different buckets. But the most important two parts are the market, who you're talking to. Are you speaking to the right people? And the offer that you put in front of that market. So that conventional wisdom tells us that makes up 80%. Those two things make up 80% of any direct marketing campaign. If you nail those two things, you, for all intents and purposes, have a 80% chance of having a successful campaign. If the creative is garbage, right? The creative is really just 20% of the puzzle. So I think very good copy isn't really about writing at all. I mean, writing is a means to an end. It's important, and you can't really bypass it. But really, as copywriters, we're making sure that we're putting a good offer in front of the right people. And from a writing standpoint, we just want to make sure that that message, that offer is clear and concise, easy to understand. From a design standpoint, we want to make sure that, hey, are all of the design elements here enabling people to read the copy? Are they making it easy for people to read?
Well, all of that becomes the communication, doesn't it? It's not just the word. It's everything. Like you say, the design, even the user experience. Like, when we were talking about the landing pages, what goes where, the hierarchy of things, and the social proof, and all of that stuff that communicates something as a whole, right? And
yes.
that's what you do, I guess.
Yeah.
So going back to your book as well, was that a different experience? Like you obviously had the cover of a book designed, right? Like how important is that with the whole book, I guess?
That's very important. I mean, it's, they say don't judge a book by its cover because people judge a book by its cover. I mean, it's so important. And my mentors, people that I look up to and go to for advice, were like, you have an opportunity here. Don't F it up by making this cover about you, Don't turn this cover into something artistic and something that is going to feed your soul. Turn this cover into something that is going to advertise the book, whether it's to people that know very good copy or don't know very good copy. And I think my big mistake was doing the former first. Was like I decided to create a cover that was interesting and compelling to me, and not necessarily to to my audience. And I changed that. Like I said, all's well that ends well. Like the cover is right now, and I'm very happy with it, and I'm glad I did what I did. But I created something that was artistic, that I liked, and I almost signed off on it. And I think Rick Rubin said that, like, when you can't make art without yourself in mind. Art has to start with the maker. You have to make something that you like, that you appreciate, that feeds your soul and makes you happy. And if other people like it, that's great. Then they'll connect with your art. But if you're making ads, you can't make an ad without thinking about other people by definition. An ad starts with the market. And so that was a huge mistake that I made, and it was really embarrassing because I was working with a great designer, somebody that isn't, is just a professional person with a great track record. And I basically came to her after we were like 99% of the way there, and I was like, look, like, this is magnanimously on me. This was my F up. But we can't go with this cover. I gotta, and I gave her a different cover, and I was like, can you recreate this in your program? And we'll just go with this so that we don't take any more time. And
well, the cover that you landed on is, like I said, again, I said this to you the other day, it just feels like you, and that's all part of that brand, right? Let me see if I can push it up here. No, I can't seem to. See if I can put the cover up. But it's just like that's what I would have expected from you. So from a brand point of view, again, I think I explained this, but it's that what you want to communicate to your audience and then their perception, and there's a gap between. So we call that the brand gap. So we're trying to reduce that when we work with companies, and you did that. I would imagine, I've not seen obviously the original cover, but there was that gut feeling for you, I imagine, thinking this isn't me and this isn't what my audience thinks or feels about me. Was there any of those questions?
The thing is, it was a little too much. It was too much me. It was like the cover was, it was like a orange kind of pinkish hue. And then on the left side, there was this strip of images, and it was my family, and it was me, and it was like just very personal pictures that, if anybody that knows Very Good Copy and read a lot of my work would recognize the brand in that, because I usually use my family to kind of frame all these lessons that I'm writing about. Or I use like personal experiences. So like from that standpoint, I thought I was doing the right thing. And I had like the Very Good Copy logo kind of repeating over and over again on each one. And if you go on the website, you'll see those pictures and the Very Good Copy logo repeating. So it seemed like the right thing to do. But then when I took a step back and I was like, this is actually kind of jarring to people. Like, the title was different. The title was Becoming a Copywriter. It wasn't Very Good Copy. All of these repeating logos was probably strange to people, especially if they were seeing it for the first time. And I just wasn't allowing myself to kind of like see that. Or maybe I was too pot committed, and I was like, okay, all of this work has already gone into this. It's hard to kind of back up now. I'm still processing it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still trying to figure out what the hell happened. Because it's so, I guess, like out of character,
How do you know when something is right? Like whether it's copy or in that specific moment of that cover, like when you were sitting down and you knew that was wrong, and then you drew something up and say this is right. You passed it to the designer. You obviously had to see what the work that designer had to do with it. But then, like, how do you know? Is it a gut feeling?
It's a gut feeling, but I think in this case it was like, I just wanted to recreate the formula that I was using online. It's been proven already. Like, I've been using it for years and years. When people see the Very Good Copy logo and they see, all of the, I guess, brand elements, the word micro, thinking, writing, like when the white on black, like the dark lines, when people see it, they understand and they subscribe, and it gets them, it sells them on the promise of Very Good Copy. And so my goal was just to recreate that effect, only do it on a book cover. And so I think that was like my North Star. And and then also, there's a whole bunch of rules when it comes to nonfiction reference books. There's, when you're writing a novel and you're creating a cover for a novel, it's different. I don't know what the rules are, but you don't necessarily have to like impart the value that you're going to give people. You just have to make something that looks compelling, I think. And don't quote me on that, but I think that that's what it is. But I know for a fact that when you're writing a nonfiction reference book and you're creating a cover for it, that cover has to elucidate what people are going to get out of it, and it has to be very clear, and there has to be, credibility elements on it, and it just has to do things have to be in order for it to do its job, and my first version did not have that, and so it was this gut feeling like I'm doing something wrong here, which was then reinforced by all the people that I solicited feedback from way too late.
Well, that was going to be my next question, right? So like, what does that collaboration look like? I know you weren't as active with your content because you were busy writing that book, I would imagine, along with other stuff. But and you've had a designer in, but in terms of the actual collaboration on the writing, obviously it's written by you, but that feedback as well, you just mentioned it, and you said you got it too late. I mean, take us through that.
Well, I was just kind of holed up, I was holed up, and I, again, I can't really tell you why I didn't send it out sooner. I think maybe part of me was like, oh, I don't want to reveal this cover to like this committee of people, my mentors and everything, too soon, because maybe they won't get the idea. And so I just kind of like dragged it out until it was basically like exactly what I thought it would be. And like, until I was ready to pull the trigger. And then I showed everybody, and everybody was like nice, nobody was like shitting on it, but they were like, oh yeah, I really like it, except for, the color and the images and the
everything
photography. And I was like, that's the whole thing. I was like, you know what I mean? So like they were being nice to me, but there was this clear and present theme, and it became like like what people were saying, like it wasn't an outlier anymore. Like there was a consensus, it seemed. And so I should have been, every iteration that the designer got back to me, I should have been sending it out to folks and I think getting their take, and it would have made my thinking much clearer, my decisions much better, but I didn't.
Or maybe more complex and struggling into design by committee. It's a thin balance, about kind of like getting feedback and getting the right feedback. But I love your story, and thanks for sharing it with me and with all of us. Like it makes me think a lot about the work that we do, right? And a lot of the times founders, tech founders, brand owners, they focus so much on their baby, and it's their creature that they want to bring out. But the reality is that who owns that is the public, the consumer, the reader, the actual user of the brand. And every time we say to the people we work with that you don't own your brand, people own your brand, the customer own your brand. So it's very hard for us to do that introspective work to detach ourselves from the baby and actually realize that we're doing it for them, not for us.
Yes.
Ultimately, right? And that journey, that beautiful journey that you discovered, I think to me goes back to the work that we're trying to do every day.
My agonizing journey. But, but you're right. I mean, maybe that's what it was. Is like I didn't want to show people, because there was this like this aversion to like design by committee, and like creating by committee, and I know that very well, and maybe that was impacting it. And for that, I think you just, it's not like, I still think feedback needs to come much, much sooner in any creative project. It's just like the person, the point person needs to have their filter on, they need to have a good filter for the feedback that's viable and the feedback that's not really, like appropriate or necessary. And like to have a good filter, you just need to know what your end goal is. What is the end goal of this design, of this writing, of whatever, and does that feedback apply to it?
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit like, again, when we do audits as well, right? We look at some of the data, we listen to people speak in interviews, but we have to kind of read between the lines as well. Mm-hmm. We don't take everything as gospel in terms of what they're saying about a certain product or service or whatever. We've got 100%. To dig a little bit deeper. And I guess feedback on something like that, especially when it's people that you trust and like, there's an element of them going to be nice for the sake of it. Even your good friends that usually give you the straight, honest feedback and comments, there's going to be some, they're going to deliver it in a nice way.
Yeah. Well, I think when people give feedback, if you ask for feedback, like, people are going to find something to say because they feel like they're not doing a good job if they don't, so like they're going to nitpick something, or they're going to mention something, and so it's just about like having a filter for that as well, just like realizing when people are saying something to kind of like appease the process, or if it's really a necessary change that needs to happen.
So let's talk about go-to-market in a general sense. And for this, your book launch, like promoting it and having a strategy for that part element. When does that come into play? Or are you already thinking about all of these things from the start?
Yeah, well, I started making a wait list last year, a long time ago, probably almost 10 months ago, I started the waitlist. So just kind of like started teasing this idea of a book, a very good copy book coming out, building the waitlist, making sure that there was a group of people that I knew were warm and interested in the idea, so that I could not only get a lot of people to get it on the day that it comes out, but to also like continue marketing the book, as it after it was released. So I think a wait list at the end of the day is a really important way to launch anything. And we see, it's not a new thing, but it's one of those essential parts of any kind of launch campaign.
Have you always done that with every product, like your transformational landing page course? Did you have a wait list that long, like 10 months?
Definitely. I think the wait list for the course was even longer, maybe a year and a half.
Right.
Like that. A long time.
Eddie, can we dig in on that a bit? Like,
yeah, sure.
We always try and like leave our listeners, our audience, our viewers with kind of some practical executional stuff. When we're talking about like, copy that converts, what's your kind of little life hacks on if we're going to go start writing some copy that's going to potentially convert for us?
You mean in terms of the wait list?
No, in terms of generally how you approach writing copy.
Oh, well, I mean, we talked about it. It's the 40-40-20 rule of direct marketing. You got to think about your market, and then you got to create a really good offer for those folks. Yeah. And that, I think in as far as like the wait list went, like I tried to incentivize, and this is just a good general principle, is like, no matter how much people love your brand or love you as a creator or love anything that you've done, like everybody needs some sort of incentive to take action. A lot of, some people will, just out of the goodness of their heart, but like, I don't think as a copywriter you can depend on that. As a marketer, you can depend on people's kind of like goodwill. You always have to incentivize folks. And so the other day when I released the cover, I sent an email to the waitlist and I said, hey, I released the cover. It's on LinkedIn. If you're feeling generous, go and leave a like or a comment. I'd really appreciate it. But if you're feeling extra generous, repost it. And in a couple weeks, 50 people will get an email on this wait list saying that they've won a free copy of the book. And it's going to be signed and it's going to go to their house. And just by virtue of being on this list, you have one raffle ticket, right? And if you repost it, which is really easy to track, you will get 2 additional raffle tickets. And just increase your chances of getting picked for the free book. And so this worked really well. I think by far my most successful marketing post. I think it's got something like 300 reposts just from this concept of incentivizing folks and giving, what's in it for me? That's the question in everybody's mind. And so the offer is really critical in that sense. It's like, how can I position this offer so that people have this immediate value in mind? So that's what we were saying. I think you might have hopped off, Wes, but that was the gist. Is like, writing copy is really just the means to an end. I think a copywriter's real job is figuring out how to put something extremely valuable and compelling and enticing, whatever word you want to use, in front of that market, making sure that market is good too.
Can anyone write good copy?
Sure. Yeah. If you're an empathetic person, I think. If you can.
So it's all about doing it from always with the user perspective, right? But sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, and I think a lot of people write out there. Not many people are able to make it convert and make it persuasive, and even if they have the end user in mind, what do you think is the difference in there?
Well, I think from a writing standpoint, a lot of people just, it's a craft, it's a discipline, just like anything else. So the more you do it, the better you're gonna write. So the more clearly you're gonna write, the more concisely you're gonna write. Clarity and concision are really at the center of the writing craft, I think. If you look at a sentence and you say, how can I make this more clear? How can I make this more concise? Then odds are, and you do what you have to do to make that happen. Then, that's half the battle. It's more than half the battle. So from a writing standpoint, I think that's the most important piece. But it just takes practice, and it just takes reps to kind of get that into your, to develop your taste, to look at something and say, this isn't right yet, and that's what was happening with the book. It's like I would go back, I compiled all this stuff that I had written over the last decade, right? And I would read stuff from 8 years ago or 5 years ago, or even 6 months ago, and it would make me cringe, and I would be like, oh my God, like I can't believe that I was putting that out. And it was a strange feeling, because I looked back at the performance of those posts, or, what people have said about it. And it was met really well. But I, as a writer and as a marketer, have changed. I've just changed as a person, and like, maybe I got better. Maybe I have a different perspective on things. So it was like going back and updating all that stuff. But anyway, I digress. I think from a writing standpoint, it's just developing, your taste and being able to look at a piece of writing and being like, okay, that's not clear, that's not concise enough. But really, it's an empathy game. It's like, how well can I understand this market, and how creative can I be when I'm putting something in front of them?
Yeah, it's interesting, and it goes back once more to brand, isn't it? Most of the reasons why companies fail is because they miss the mark with the customer, right? So they miss that empathy connection. And one of the most key lessons for marketeers and brand builders is to have empathy for the user. Why should they care interacting with you, right? And that goes back to tactics, like you were saying about the raffle and getting a free copy, but that goes back also on like brevity, direct and direct copy, and having people understand what you're saying and how you're saying in the most effective way. Does reading help? Do you do a lot of reading?
Yeah, of course. I do. Well, I studied literature in college, and I read a lot of minimalist authors. I read Bukowski and Raymond Carver and Hemingway, and I was interested in those guys because of the imagery that was in their writing, and because of how efficient their writing was, So I think that has helped me, and I think it's informed the work that I do, and just my style in general. But I was, after college and after I discovered copywriting and I got hired as a writer, I started digging into direct response copywriting. And at first it was strange, because I would read guys like Joe Sugarman. I pick up his book, and after 4 years of reading literature, you read Joe Sugarman, and you're like, is this guy a fifth grader? Like, it just seemed like it seemed too simple and like too elementary, and so I remember having like a visceral reaction to it. But the more I read, and the more I kind of got accustomed with like why he was making the decisions that he was, it started to make sense. And so eventually, reading all of those authors and reading all of these direct marketers, over time, it just kind of blended together, and
you get a baggage, right? You get experience and everything. And Eddie, what's your view on AI then, right? I think AI is kind of like has a big proposition of making writing and things simpler. Do you use it yourself?
I use it sometimes. I use it for some brainstorming. It's a good way to get started, I think. But I don't really know how to prompt AI that well. I don't really know all the tricks and stuff. But I do know that, AI doesn't have lived experiences like people. AI doesn't have, AI can't, it's a regurgitation machine.
It doesn't have empathy as well, isn't it?
I was going to say, it's interesting, like you lean into empathy a lot. Like when we lean into it a little bit for brand and workshops, and research, it has no emotion. So when you're trying to force it to think like a human in that sense, it kind of fails.
Yeah. Well, it's not nuanced the way that the humans are. You know, it doesn't have our lived experiences, and it can't recount truly human experiences. And so I think a lot of the most powerful writing is nuanced, and it does remind us of ourselves, whether it's what's the good part of ourselves or the ugly part of ourselves. And I think that AI struggles and will continue to struggle to recreate that part.
You know what this part of the conversation reminds me of is your Goodwill Hunting post. Was it Goodwill Hunting? No. Well, it was Robin Williams, wasn't it?
Yep.
And basically talking about emotion, basically. That's what it was about, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and then lived experiences as well.
Yeah, he was sitting on a bench with Will Hunting, and Will Hunting was this mathematical prodigy, a genius, and he was really resistant. He got whatever. The story is like he got a court order to see the psychiatrist, and he went and saw the psychiatrist, Robin Williams, and wanted to, offend him so that he wouldn't want to work with him anymore because he didn't want to go see a psychiatrist, and he made fun of this guy's wife, this guy's wait life. And then Robin Williams was like, listen, you're a genius, but you don't know anything. You've never been out of Boston. If I asked you about, war, you'd quote Shakespeare, once more into the breach, dear friends. If I asked you about, art, you would tell me about Michelangelo. He would be a Wikipedia, he's, and that's what AI is. It's like it's Wikipedia. It just brings up the fact.
Let's say I'm curious to know a bit more about you, Eddie. Like, so what do you do outside of writing? Like, what, you're not just a walking like quill. So like, what do you do? Like,
I just got these kids, man.
Paint a little picture. Where's the inspiration from, man?
Well, I got two kids. There's two small kids. One's 2.5, one's 6 months, and so that's just my whole life. Me and my wife, we take them to Costco. We go to the parks. When I'm not in here, I'm just with them, and so that's a huge part of my life. And I'm before the kids, I was spending a lot of time working on VGP, building it up, doing what I could. But now I'm on a very kind of regimented schedule.
Is that your writing environment that you're in there?
Yeah, this is my office, I guess, so to speak. Yeah.
Where do you get your inspirations from outside of reading other copy, reading your own copy, analyzing your stuff and books and stuff like that? Music, films, I take it anywhere. Do you get inspiration from anywhere?
Yeah. And I think I write some of my best stuff like on the couch, at night after dinner. Yeah, I'm watching TV and I see something and it just, I think the trick is, you have to really know the craft that you're writing about. If you're writing about creativity or copywriting, you have to really understand that discipline. And then as you go through life, you'll come into story. At least this is how it happened with me. Like I come into these little experiences, stories, what have you, whether they're personal or I see them on TV or, whatever, but they remind me of a principle or they remind me of a technique. They remind me of a tactic. And then once that connection happens, then it's like, okay, let me just mark this down and leave this here. And then I'll check it the next day or the next day after that. And if I still feel excited about the connection and I still feel like there's a way to I guess, put those things together in a flush way, then I'll write about it. That's what happened with Good Will Hunting. He was giving this whole monologue about how, Good Will Hunting is really just, or Will Hunting is really just this, he's just this cocky, scared kid, that doesn't know anything about love or war or friendship, because he doesn't allow himself to do that, and it just sounded like AI. AI can tell you about everything, but it can't it can't really talk to you about these things that are in us. I asked AI to tell me about when the birth of their first son. It was just like, it was vanilla, and it wasn't my experience at all. So
yeah, it's beautiful. I think that again, once more goes back to brand, I guess, because again there is that empathy, and once more goes back into people do not buy the best brand because of features. People buy the brand that makes them feel something. There is a really interesting study, which I think it was Harvard Business School, that up to 95% of the purchases that we make are driven by emotion, to the point that people that have brain damage on the emotional sphere of the brain are unable to make purchase decisions. That's astonishing, isn't it? Like, millennial of evolution, and you can read everything about tangibility, reviews, and learn everything about product, and yet ultimately you purchase because of an emotional connection with that brand, right? Which is also driven by what you do, by copy and story, which it's incredible. And we tend to forget that as well, like how much empathy can actually translate into bottom line, into sales, into conversion, into money.
Yeah. It's everything. I think it's why that's why I've had a modicum of success with VGC, because I frame all of these lessons in emotional stories about myself, my family, whatever. I see you guys doing it on the show. Before the guest comes on, you guys have a banter. You guys have this kind of you guys put your relationships on display, and that's an emotional thing as well. Yeah. And so I think anytime you can inject emotion into a product, it's going to improve the result.
100%. It's like that old iPod, right? The copywriting of the iPod, a big classic. Like, they did not promote this new music compression technology, the MP3. They said 1,000 songs in your pocket. Yeah. Like, how much more visual is that delivery of
visual and emotional, right? Because it just taps into a relatable emotion that people needed, as opposed to all of those features and benefits.
Yeah, you're also addressing like a value proposition, right? You're literally connecting straight to something that's valuable to that consumer. That's not tangible. That's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think in copywriting, we call that like dimensionalizing the value. You say, okay, we have all this technology in this iPod, and then you say, okay, so what? So you can have 1,000+ songs in your pocket, you know, and the more you drill down, the more you ask, so what, and drill down, the closer you get to the actual the ad. The thing that the message you should be putting out there.
Yeah. Great question. Ash, we have a question, I think, from James. And yes, James, we do take questions. So anyone in the audience, please just
let me just flash it up on screen. Yeah. How do you share quality artwork without cheapening your real art and investment?
Quality artwork without cheapening your real art and investment.
I was trying to understand that question.
Yeah, can you rephrase that for us, James? What do you mean? How do you share artwork without cheapening? Do you feel like if you're sharing artwork and you're getting feedback from other people, you might have to compromise on what you feel like it should be? I'm kind of getting that. Is that what you mean? And what is it exactly need help with the understanding there?
Yeah, maybe there's some kind of, maybe there's like a question about like the difference between, maybe creating an ad and creating art, or I think there just needs to be like a separation of church and state there, and you just really, as a marketer, as a copywriter, you always have to think about the goal of this communication. Who is it speaking to, and what is the end goal? What is that one thing that I want people to do? And let that inform your decisions, and that goes that goes for all copywriters, all marketers, everybody making advertising. If you want to make art, go write a book, right? Go write a novel, go work for a magazine. If you want to make art, go make art somewhere else. But if you want to make an ad, I think that you really need to respect your audience and respect the message itself. What is it that you want them to understand and do, and let that be your North Star. Let that lead you. Otherwise, you're going to conflate things, and you're not going to be happy with it, and your market isn't going to understand it, and it's not going to be effective for them either. So you have to pick a lane.
It's quite an interesting approach. Like I used to do a similar thing with my teams back in corporate. It's like, okay, let's list the words we want to leave our audience with, right? Let's list the emotions we want to leave them with, and we'll start there. And so then we backtrack in on the creative and say, right, if we know it needs to leave them emotional or feeling warm, how do we activate that? How do we create a sensory, whether it be visual or verbal, and do that? But I think you touching on your point there about giving each piece of work you do or an objective or a purpose, I think it's really interesting as an action for everyone to take away, to simplify it. Like, let's give everything a purpose and let's try and meet that purpose.
And the smaller you can make it for yourself, the easier it becomes. Like, give your brand one adjective. You know what I mean? And try to.
How hard is that, though? Huh?
Yeah.
How hard is to distill that?
It is hard. Nobody said it was easy, but I think that's the way it goes. It's like, when I say Volvo, what do you guys think? You know what I mean?
Safety.
That 100% of the people that have ever been asked that question,
it takes time though as well, Eddie, right? Isn't it? It takes commitment, clarity, but also perseverance and consistency through time, right?
And this is mad. Like this is again leaning into like brand building, right?
Yeah.
You do positioning. Like when you say Red Bull, you think of energy drink. It's like, it's so obvious once you explain it that way and simplify it. And before I dropped, for whatever internet reasons I have, we were talking about like keeping it simple and keeping it actionable. And that's another thing that we leave our clients with in our workshops, in our documents, is like, let's make this as simple as, let's make it in their language. Let's give it something so tangible and actionable that they can actually live and take this brand forward with. And you're saying the same thing about copy, right? Let's make it actionable. Let's make it do something.
Yeah. And we have a rule, and with Wes as well, because me and Wes come from the creative background as well, right? So we are coaching our creatives to never say I like it, but just to ask, does it work or it does not work? Yeah. I think, and that's a massive difference once again between design and art. Yeah. Art, you can like it, it makes you think, it maybe even gives you problems, it just shocks you, isn't it? Like you've been thinking about it, that this is like, I don't like, or I like it or don't like it, but it's making me think. Design, on the other hand, needs to solve problems, right? Does it work or does not work? And the hardest bit on translating brand strategy into visual, sometimes it goes back into simple things like color.
Yeah.
I like blue because blue is social. I like red because red in Asia means luck. Yeah, sure. But it also means that 99% of your other competitors are using the same color. So it probably does not work on the fundamental rule of brand identity, which is standing out.
Yeah.
Differentiate.
So there is a lot of work that needs to happen in that. And I love what you said before. If you want to go do art, go and do art. And probably we are creative people, right? So we need to channel that desire of doing art, quote unquote, for the sake of doing art. But then if we need to sell, convert, persuade, that's a different.
It needs to do a job. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, there's a great Mad Men scene where Don Draper tells Peggy Olson that she's not an artist. She solves problems. Peggy's the copywriter, and she's upset about some kind of creative direction that they're taking. And she was like, yeah, well, what if we were making a movie, we'd be embarrassed about this. It would be phony, and he was like, sorry to break it to you, but you're not making a movie, you're not an artist. You solve problems. So it's a great ethos to have. Yeah.
And it's a constant, isn't it? Going back to that empathy and that goal, the strategy, because like as creative people, we tend to navigate, and then I found it much easier now, but back in the days when I was junior creative, like first of all, I was taking feedback very personal, right? So the work I was doing was also me, was defining me. That took a long time, but also I liked it. I wanted this to be out. Then I did not realize that actually it doesn't matter that I like it or not. It needs to bloody work.
It's really hard to kind of swallow that. Where but as you get older and more mature and you own businesses, and I try and teach my clients the same thing now. Like, the irony is you remove the emotion when you get to that point, right?
Yeah.
Take the emotion out of it, and let's say, does it work or does it not? You justify to me why that works or why it doesn't work, and I'll listen. But I don't want you to listen or jump at me like, I want to use yellow. We need to use yellow. Why? Tell me why. Tell me in what point of this journey or this industry does yellow work? Tell me why. And if you say and justify it, I'm like, I'm in. Good. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think you said the right thing. It's like maturity, right? It's like that maturation process, and it takes time to get there. In the very beginning, you're not creatively mature, and you do get attached to things, and you do look at things from the wrong point of view.
Yeah.
And but what's funny, what I was telling Ash yesterday was like, I felt like I was past that, like making this book. I felt like I was mature, like I've been doing this for a long time, but still I was able to fall into these.
The bug is there, isn't it? We have it.
Yeah.
It's in our brain.
And so that's why I wish I would have reached out to folks sooner and kind of got their perspective sooner, so that they could like snap me out of it, like wake me up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, it's done now. Eddie, I'm going to be mindful of your time because we're coming up to the hour. But just before we go, where can everyone grab this book?
Well, just go to VeryGoodCopy and in the main nav, click book, and you could sign up for the wait list there. And then when it comes out, you can get it for less, and you could get entered into that raffle to win a free book. You could follow along with the campaign. Yeah. VeryGoodCopy.com.
One last thing before you go. Ash hates this. I love it. Like,
I don't hate it. I don't mind it.
Because 9 times out of 10, Ash gets put on the spot. Give us a question. Like, have you got any questions for us? Anything that's curious or you want to ask?
Well, yeah. I know that you worked as a musician, right, Wes?
I've got a music past, yeah.
You got a music
in some respect.
Were you in the rap scene or the hip hop scene?
No. I've just always been heavily involved, but a lot of my music influences come from fashion, believe it or not. And I intertwined in fashion and got into the industry because I had a huge love for music and a huge love for hip hop. And then when I moved to New York, I just fell into the hip hop scene through clothing, which is quite interesting. So the likes of Rockaware, Fat Farm, Russell Simmons, Jay-Z, David, that respect.
So to that end, as you're making music, like how did you balance, or I guess in general, in the music industry, how do you think they balance creating art, creating something that they love and that they appreciate, and also like marketing that?
It's an interesting, isn't it? Like I'm a firm believer in the people that break through in music are normally the ones that rebel against the norm, right? The ones that, we take Wu-Tang, we take Public Enemy, we take whether that be verbally rebelling against society or how Wu-Tang approached the whole industry by creating their own music and bringing in symphonies and orchestras and 6 different people or 8 different people to make up a band that then broke away, that came back together. I would always preach, like, it's a hard game. It's a hard game to try and be unique in the music industry because you're now monitored socially by your growth and your reward, where back in the day, it was a breakthrough. And it, strategy came into play, I think, through artists. Once they'd realized they could like bend the system, calling into radio shows to ask for airplay, XYZ, you could break that way. But now it's social recognition. And I think it's really different. And it's a different beast. I know a lot of people in the industry. And yeah, you're now measured off of your likes and your shares and your likability. I actually wrote a post on it a couple of weeks back about how it's influenced by, up likes and love hearts. So I think it's really hard. It's a hard question to ask. Like I would still be the champion of you stick to your lane and you make yourself unique. And the voices that are unique now that we hear in our ears, especially in the hip hop, rap, R&B world, are unique, and they've stuck to their guns.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why hip hop's such a good example of that, because all of the people that have done well and have stayed in the game for that length of time are the ones that disrupted, that did something different. But then there's other elements to it. It's their sounds, it's their voices, their distinctive voices.
Even in
right?
clothing, like
their style.
I read about just this kind of idea of like the medium is the message now with music as well, because like on Spotify, for example, they don't get paid unless you listen to a certain amount of the song on Spotify. You don't get the credit and you don't get the monies. So now artists like Drake, for example, would purposefully
have an intro.
Start with the hook, you know, just to like get people invested. And so it's just that was fascinating to me, because it was like, man, like Drake is now playing the game.
Yeah, it's commercialized, right? And I think I hate to say it, but I think that's what Mos Def was leaning into when he caused all the beef like last month, because he was basically saying he's playing the game, which rightly so. Like he wants to make millions, and that's how to do it. But if you want to try and be authentic, I think in the music world, it's hard, and the world needs that from a music point of view. Like we need new artists, we need new styles, we need new sounds. Like that's the only way that this industry evolves.
And it needs to be in a way personal, which is kind of a throwback to that AI thing. Like you can't, like that's why Kendrick Lamar won a Pulitzer, because it wasn't music, it was reporting, right? Like he was reporting on his life and like the reality of his people.
And the people that rebel against that movement are the ones that will get. And I mean, Macklemore's new track, or Macklemore in general, like writes about social impact, social movement, social. His latest one about everything that's going on, doing Gaza, and it's insane if you've not heard it, but it's a political like poem against society and against change, and he stands up and he's recognized for it, right? And that comes from hard graft, being in the right place at the right time, getting recognized, and that's how music breaks, how artists break.
And it speaks to being brave about that as well, making a decision and doing something that's completely opposite to what's happening right now, right? And moving out of that safe zone. So that's where different is good, right? I know we talked about different and better before, but I suppose in terms of new strategies, the work we do, that's where different is good. It's like, you don't want to be lost in the noise.
It's an interesting question. Like I could talk about that for hours, but even just going back into the fashion world, and then we think about an audience, we know our audience, right? We know who we're designing for, but to make this different, we have to bend and flex or introduce something. Like Jay-Z raps about, skinny jeans, and never in my life when I worked in the hip hop world in clothing would I ever expect to see skinny jeans on rap artists. And it happened. It changed because an artist realized, like, okay, I'm gonna inject a little bit of the white Midwest society into my genre, and I'm going to attract a better audience or a wider audience. And it happened, right? And I would have never in my life expected that, in the industry 10, 20 years ago.
Or Beyonce going, releasing a country album.
Exactly.
Like country is the most popular music in America.
Yeah.
By far.
But that is the movement re-happening again. When Wu-Tang decided to go and tour with, Slipknot or whoever it was, it's like, okay, let's get us in front of that audience, and that is a strategic move. Let's go and move that.
Yeah.
Way, So, again, authenticity is the thing generally.
Eddie, thanks so much for your time, man. It's been such a great conversation, and like you can see, we can probably go on and on. But
I appreciate you guys very much. I mean, I don't think I've ever done a live before. This is actually really nerve-wracking for me, thinking about like going on live and speaking extemporaneously and just like not having any edits, or I don't know. It just seems
It
seems
seems
crazy to me. But you guys do it
yeah.
you guys do it every week, so I admire that, and I applaud it, and I just wish.
I think what's great
But-
that we recognized is like that we don't change. Like if anyone's ever worked with us in a workshop, the banter lives on. We will literally rip the shit out of each other in front of client. We will prod, poke, challenge. Some people think we're arguing. We're actually generally not. But it's just.
But also, Eddie,
it's mad.
But also, Eddie, you cannot be worse than Wes and Ash on Alive. So because the benchmark is so low.
I had internet problems, man. What's wrong?
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on again. It was a
Thank
nice
you, buddy.
experience.
Have a great weekend.
Come back soon.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Take
Yes,
care,
sir.
man.
Yes, sir.
Peace,
See you
man.
guys.
Before we go, guys, if you enjoyed the conversation, you want to learn more about it, you want to find some tactics and frameworks that you can bring into life, into bringing empathy, selling more, converting, having a good strategy framework, spending less in your marketing, and tons of other interesting bits. We have 2 special workshops happening in Cyprus at the beginning of June, which are packed with value and very, very cheap. Like we understood that there are people and organizations that cannot afford it right now. Hence, we took what we sell to Fortune 500 down to the bare minimum with the maximum impact. And we have a few tickets left. One is for a corporate, helping organization to grow and stand out by spending less. And the other one is all about personal branding as well, building a personal brand that converts, that sells, and helps to stand out in the market. These are 2 full days workshop with the 3 of us in live, in person, in Limassol in June. If you're interested, DM and I can send you a few more details.
If you're at Reflect, it's perfect to I guess carry on.
100%. We'll be in Reflect as well. You're right.
I'll be on stage. I don't know if anyone's recognized that, but I'll be there chatting, talking, bringing chocolate. Has actually responded back. A great response. I wish Raka would have been around when Eddie was there. Like
Raka is the man for this. Yeah,
Raka's my G. There. But no, I think what one last thing left. We want to start taking some recommendations of like people that you want us to bring on. So now we've kind of exhausted our network. We've got a lineup over the next 3 months.
We've still got some wicked lists
we have some
lined up,
other stuff.
actually.
But like, if there's somebody that's on your mind that like you said, I wish I could hear this person, like give us the
Let us
challenge
know.
to go out and get them. And
Especially, I wish I could hear this person more than Wes and Ash. Those are the type of people that we like to bring on board.
This guy is always
nice.
slamming.
He's not nice today.
Right, guys, take care. Have fun.